All right, I wanted to make a few comments on interviews. We don't, we don't take a huge look at this. There's lots of different things that you can find out or discover online about, getting through interviews and that kind of thing. But I wanted to point out a few of the basics of interviews and job benefits that people often don't think about when they're dealing with job benefits. Things that you need to take into account. Let's say that you actually get offered a job and they say, okay, the pay is going to be 42,000 a year starting. At the same time, you interviewed someplace else and they're like, hey, the pay is going to be 44,000 starting. Now, if you just take pay into account, then go with the 44, right? But that's not all there is. There's some big things that you need to consider. One is free training. It takes basically, on average, $1,800 to $2,000 to train somebody for any job. And you say, well, what are you talking about? Well, it's just in the time that it takes to train you, the materials that they give to you, the time other people take to come train you. It costs money. And so you need to understand that from an employer's perspective, they really don't want to go through that process over and over again. It's time consuming for them and it costs money. And so when it's time to do the interviews, and let's say you made it to the final 20 interviews, you're not aware of that, right? But they are. And so you made it to the final 20, they're spending time on you, they're spending money on you. And if you actually make it through that process and they hire you, then they're spending even more money on you. And they don't want to turn around 2 weeks later, 6 months later, a year later, and say, well, we got to hire somebody else, right? So if you got that 42,000 and 44,000 job that are sitting there and they say, well, part of our benefits package is each year you get $5,000 to go train. And you think, I don't get to spend that money, right? Meaning that you don't get to put that into your pocket, right? You're not putting that into your pocket, and you don't get the 5,000, but it's 5,000 in training. Those are things you get to put down on your resume. For instance, in the tech world, that free training is usually, you can do certifications as part of that. So you can go off someplace for a week and get a certification that hopefully you're going to use for them. That's what they're hoping. But also, in the long run, that may be what you take and use to leave and make $10,000 more at the next place you go to. So if somebody was offering me 42,000 or 44,000, but free training for the 42, I would go with the 42 because that free training is going to mean a lot. But you can't just sit and, we're talking about after the interview at that point, pretty much. And they say, well, this is the package. And they say, and we do offer training every year. We'll pay for training. And you say, oh, wow, that's interesting. So what do you mean by that? Am I allowed to go anywhere? Are there certain things you want me to be trained in? Man, that'd be exciting. And you talk up how excited you are, but you also get more information about, well, how does this free training work? And they go, oh, well, that's $3,000, and it has to be legitimate training. So we'll buy your plane ticket, we'll buy your hotel stay, and we'll approve whatever training it is that you're going to go to, and see. So that is like, okay, well, that's building my career. The other place, it's, well, 44,000. Is there any training that comes along with that? Do I train every year? Yeah, if you want to, but we're not paying for it. That's a huge difference. Of course, health insurance is massive. Most people are aware of that. Most health insurance do a 60-40 split or a 40-60 split, which is worse. So if they do a 60-40 split, what that means is that they're going to pay 60% of your insurance as part of your payment package, and then you pay the other 40% of your insurance. Bigger companies will do this, which is a 90-10 split, because bigger companies realize that it's harder to be part of a bigger company. You can get lost in the cogs, right? And so they'll take care of your insurance. My brother-in-law works for Raytheon. Not the friend I was talking about, but my brother-in-law works for Raytheon, and his insurance is basically a 90-10 split. I don't know exactly, but it's pretty close to that. So they have great insurance, right? They pay very little when they go into the doctor or go to the hospital or any of that. Raytheon pays for all of that. The smaller places often will do this, a 40-60 split, which means that they're going to pay 40%, you pay 60. This is a huge matter. So let's make another comparison. Let's say that you're going to go out and you've been offered $90,000 at one place and $95,000 in another place. And the 95,000 is a 40-60 split, meaning you're going to pay more in your insurance than go for the $90,000 job. Take the $5,000 less. Because when you look at how much you have to pay every single month, you're going to be making more money at the $90,000 job than you are at the 95. And you have to think of the insurance. The reason I mention this is not necessarily because I think you're going to remember all of it, but that when you go into a job interview and you're saying, okay, they offered me the job, and they say, okay, we're going to pay you $52,000 a year starting, the questions don't end there. You don't say, yes, that sounds great. You say, what about health insurance? How do you guys cover your health insurance? What about training? How do you cover your training? Because quite often these things won't be mentioned in that package unless you're dealing strictly with the HR department. So you'll normally have to ask about these. The others, usually when you get a job, they'll say, oh, no, we give you 2 weeks time off. So that's part of that. Now, travel time, I've got this down because how far is this? How far away are you going to have to travel? I travel 7 minutes. I live over in Safford and travel 7 minutes to my job here in Thatcher. That's a great travel time. When I got hired here, though, somebody asked me if I was going to move to Thatcher. And I was like, well, I kind of am established where I am. It's hard to sell houses and stuff like that. And then I said, why? And they're like, oh, so you'd have a shorter travel time. I'm only going 7 minutes. It's not like I live in Fort Thomas and it takes me 30 minutes to get to work every day, But travel time is part of that, right? Because there's gas costs and your time is money. And a lot of times you're going to go someplace like Phoenix or someplace and got a great job offer and it's in West Phoenix, but you live in Chandler. Gosh, that's some travel time. You got to think about that. And then is there any options from working from home, which I think this is going to go up now because of COVID, because so many people realized you can actually use technology to talk to each other and get the job done. And so working from home might be an option, and that can be a good or a bad thing. When you're not in the office being seen, sometimes there's the assumption that you ain't doing nothing. And they're like, do you work at all? And so that can be a problem too, not necessarily just a benefit. All right, so things to know about going into an interview. Like, you're going to sit down now and actually have an interview with me, and I may be your future boss. First thing is, don't bluff. Don't lie. Bluff is a nice word to say, don't lie. Now, the honest truth is, and we get into resumes a little more, so I may mention this stuff again, but on your resume, you need to, it's not lying. I don't want people to think I'm promoting lying, but you may have experience, for instance, with working with SQL Server, but that experience is only about 3 weeks that you did that. Your resume, you put down, I have experience with SQL Server. You don't say, I'm not going to put that down because it was only 3 weeks. You put it down. Then when you're in the interview, if SQL Server is important, they're going to say, so you put down that SQL Server is, something that you've done. That's the point when you say, well, I've been exposed to it. I spent about 3 weeks, having to work with it and I enjoyed it. That's where you don't bluff, right? I've actually sat in interviews where I've seen people just flat out lie. For instance, I was part of an interview for a programmer here at EAC. And I don't know what this person was thinking, but boy, on that resume, they sure did look awesome. And for some reason, they never thought that they would throw down some examples of code in front of them. right? So the lead programmer is like, here's some code. Tell me what that's doing. Now, I told you I took a couple of programming classes. I ain't no programmer. But I could look at it and say, well, it looks like you're calling some information from some kind of array or database that's over here. I can read the code and say, this is what I think it's doing. This guy just freaked, right? It was like, he just froze. It honestly was humiliating and very, very sad to watch this happen. It was like a train wreck. So don't lie. Um, Again, on your resume, if you have experience with whatever they're asking, then put it down. But when it's time for the interview, be honest about what that is. In an interview, you need to be personal, but not too personal. Uh, and I know you can read a lot of stuff online, watch a lot of stuff online, and they'll tell you the exact same thing that I just put there. Personal, but not too personal. What they mean is that you're going to be working as part of a team. You're going to be working with these people, and they need to get a sense of who you are. And if you can do that, then you're going to get the job. I have a friend who's very, very successful, and we were coming out of college. We were ending here at EAC, and he was very concerned about his future. He's like, I don't know if I'm going to get a job, blah, 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 blah. He was really concerned. I was like, dude, you are going to get whatever job you want. And he's like, well, what do you mean? I said, you're so personal with people. They walk up to you and start talking to you within 5 or 10 minutes. They don't feel intimidated by you or threatened by you. They feel like you're a friend immediately. And not all of us have that. So if you can do that with anybody, you're going to sit in an interview and they're going to go, I like this person. He's my friend, right? And then as long as you've got the skills they're looking for, you've got the experience or whatever, you're in. And that's proven to be true. He's the only friend I have that's been offered job, 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 job. He has people that he's met that'll call him and say, hey, you want a job? And I'm talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars jobs is what they've offered him. And so you want to be, it's hard, right? You're nervous, you're frightened, you're scared. A bunch of people are staring at you, you're sweating. They know it's bad. They know it's hard. They've all gone through it. And you need to understand that. In an interview, they've all done it. And so just try to figure out, even beforehand, like, how are you going to come across to them? How can you be personal with them? You don't want to be talking about what you did the night before, or the fact that you like to drink too much, or whatever it is that you have in your life that's not as good as what it should be. But you want to just be personal. When I had to do my interview here, somebody asked me, because they do a whole team, so they have at least 4 people. I had to interview with 6 people, and one of the people said, tell me what you like to do in your downtime. And I like astronomy. I love astronomy. And so I just picked that out. And I said, I love to look at the stars, and I've got this telescope that I use. And I told him about the telescope, right? I said, it's a Schmidt Newtonian, it's a 10-inch. I can look at some deep space things on it, and it really relaxes me. And you open up a little bit and show that personal thing. Like, instead of being in an interview, you're just talking with people that you went to dinner with, and that gives them an idea of who you are. Remember, they're all going to stare at you. And if they show you around, that's a good sign. So at the end of the interview, if they like you, this is typical for most places. If they like you, they'll say, oh, well, come with me. And there's somebody out sitting out there waiting, right, in the waiting room. They're the next ones to go in. You pass them by, and this person usually, if they like you, will take you around. Well, this is like, say hi to Joe. You'd be working with him, and Janet's office over here, and you saw her in the interview, and they kind of show you around. They show you around their facility. If they're doing that, that's a good sign. That doesn't necessarily mean that you got the job. It means that they cared enough about your interview, that it was good enough that they want to show you around, so that if they offer you the job, you have some kind of idea of what you're getting into. So that's an important thing. If they show you around, that's a good sign. Now, a few places will do that by standard. They show everybody around. But if they actually spend some time with you and they answer questions and tell you about why they like working there and things like that, that's good stuff. Anyway, that's just a few things about, oops, we don't need that one, about dealing with interviews and things you should think about when you actually get that job being offered to you. And that's not all of it. Um, Before you start sending out resumes, then that's the time to start looking on YouTube and other places about what do I need to know? Like, should I take this job or that? Because there's a lot of information out there. I used to go through this in a lot of detail, but there's so many resources now online that are really, really solid and good that I don't feel like I should spend the time on that.